Now, following the lifting of the 6-month emergency rule imposed on Rivers State by President Bola Tinubu, residents of the state have expressed mixed reactions about the restoration of democratic structures. While some expressed excitement about the expected resumption of Governor Fubara, others remain skeptical about what may lie ahead for both the governor and the lawmakers. Let's expand this conversation on Rivers State. We have a stakeholder, Professor Iyalla Peterside. We actually had a conversation with him yesterday on this subject matter. He is joined by constitutional lawyer and political analyst, Liborous Oshoma. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. I'll start with you, Professor Peterside, and just from our conversation from yesterday, it has happened. Did you think something could have stopped it today? Are you somewhat happy with the restoration of democratic rule?
Yes, and I think every Nigerian should be, Felicity, good evening. I think every Nigerian should be, every lover of democracy should be happy with the return of normalcy. My happiness, though, is tainted by the process itself. And the president's speech, which I welcome, did not contain any specifics of what the return of the democratic governor, under what circumstances he was returning, and what assurances the Rivers people would have that he would have a free hand to run the state according to his mandate. So we are waiting for the details of the negotiations and the agreements that led to this return. I understand that a lot of discussions have happened behind the scenes. I understand that the governor and the president and the FCT minister were in London a couple of weeks ago, and I think both of them just came back from London yesterday. And so I understand there have been discussions. The question is, what are the terms of this? Is this a capitulation? Is this a surrender? Is this a rearrangement? What is it, and what is the benefit?
I guess we'll be seeing what it is in the coming days. But Mr. Oshoma, talk to us about accountability. Yesterday when we were talking, Professor Peterside was a bit concerned about, we've not heard anything in the past 6 months, how the state of emergency went and all of that. So what does the law say in terms of stewardship of the interim administrator on decisions made, expenditures, and policies during the 6 months he held fort?
It is not true that followed the event that nothing was heard of the expenditure in Rivers State for 6 months. I remember following the budget presentation in the House of Representatives. I remember by virtue of Section 11.
I'm sorry to interject. I'm not actually talking about the budget. I'm just talking about decisions that were made in that time, and other paraphernalia that comes with the work that he has done in the last 6 months. A budget is something that we all know that happened because it went to the National Assembly.
Yeah, so decisions taken will certainly, not be outside the realm of the approval gotten from the National Assembly. If you look at the provisions of the Constitution, it wasn't for the administrator to work, in abeyance or to work or traverse the rules. It's for him to work, even though ab initio, had consistently heard that Section 305 does not empower the sacking of a democratically elected government, considering subsection 4 of Section 305. But if you put into cognizance the provisions of Section 11 of the Constitution, and also the fact that our Supreme Court had not given a clear-cut direction on the interpretation of that section, considering all of this, certainly every act or action of the administrator is guided by, processes and procedures and the budget presented. And so to that extent, you remember the controversy with the budget at the House of Representatives, the recurrent issue of, the CCTV cameras in Rivers State, and all of that. So now that you have the complement of the House of Assembly coming into being by 12 midnight today, certainly the House of Assembly it will have the opportunity of looking into, because they are inheriting that budget that was presented, they are certainly going to have the opportunity of looking into the activities and affairs of that 6 months and what was done rightly and what was done wrongly. So apart from that, really, I do not think that anything should be, untoward, considering the fact that the processes for a declaration of the state of emergency, and also the fact that every action carried out by the administrator, had been contained in the proclamation, the document, the gazette that proclaimed the state of emergency. So basically, what I see here, it's almost like an arrangement. You had to rein in the former governor so that there'll be an arrangement, an in-house arrangement, and then now they all come out smiling and clapping, and then I doubt if anybody, even though I expected that they would look back, but I doubt if anybody really would want to look back.
Talking about arrangement, Prof, you expressed a bit of skepticism. I was waiting to come to you and ask the question as to the comments made by an APC chieftain and a stakeholder, Tonye Cole, about, Fubara just becoming a figurehead, as just follow the game until your time is over and go rest. What is your thinking as to what will be practicable in terms of decision-making in Rivers State for the next 2 years or so that Fubara will hold forth?
I think in the main, these are politicians, and they have come to some kind of compromise on how to run the state, and I have no problem with that. What I would like to see, and this is what I'm talking about, the details of the arrangement, is how does that affect Rivers State and the people of Rivers State? Well, how the negotiations and the settlements that they obviously have come to affect Rivers State? If a man is the governor, how much right does he have? Micromanaging from behind doesn't work in any society and shouldn't be accepted. So what is that kind of arrangement? And I think everybody is interested to see. I don't want to give a negative connotation to Sim Fubara coming back to office. I think there are assumptions being made on both sides. One, everything will be fine. Two, oh, it's all bad. I don't want to get to that point. I want to see before I believe. And I think that it's incumbent on, which is what I said before, it's incumbent on the governor, the president, the FCT minister, and everybody to be as transparent as they can to tell us what the terms of settlement.
All right. I will stay with you and just quickly ask questions on how he can perhaps, pending when we know what the arrangements are, begin to rebuild trust with the people. I mean Fubara now, especially with lawmakers who he had issues with before coming back. We saw him shaking hands with Ambawuli earlier and others.
Sorry, is that question for me?
No, I'm staying with the Prof. Just quickly. Yeah.
Again, let's understand. They were all friends before all of this. They are probably all still friends. And so the personal details will be worked out. What we're talking about is the official details. How do they work together? Who has final say? The governor is an executive governor. The house is the house. And the type of relationship that they have has to be maintained according to the Constitution. Now, if we find the governor not asserting himself or the house being overbearing, then clearly that's not in the interest of Rivers State. So I think that it is imperative on both of them, and I hope that they have worked out, like I said before, to
build trust.
They worked out some detail as to how they relate to each other so that they don't clash all over again. As to just 1 minute, as to looking back on their sole administrators' stewardship, that's going to be difficult. And I hope that there was some mechanism put in place for somebody to look at what he did, because otherwise rumors will start spreading as to how he managed what and how he didn't manage what, and it's not uncommon for that.
Yeah, I still believe some measure of accountability is required for us to know how we can move forward. But Mr. Oshoma, I'm going to merge two questions because we're time pressed and these questions need to be asked. The first is, does this end of the emergency rule nullify the cases before the courts on the matter, or it continues perhaps for academic purposes? And then the second is, we understand a lot of politics happened before and during the emergency law, and there are speculations that he has been broken, and he still has until 2027. So what mechanism would you advise be put in place to ensure that the restored government can operate without interference, if that's possible?
Start with the last question. We need to ask ourselves first, how did Fubara become governor? You know, because we just assume that, you know, Fubara on its own sat down somewhere and said, I want to become governor. And then, you know, he went around campaign and he became governor. Fubara was somewhere and somebody said, come and become governor. Even people, a lot of people who are supporting him today probably didn't support him in the last election. And then he became governor. We saw the back and forth, Section 109, the campaign or no the campaign. So I think what has happened before the state of emergency declaration, you know, there was a stalemate. And then the state of emergency declaration provided the opportunity, whether you call it reining him in or the Godfather having an upper hand. I think at the end of the day, they are still going to, you know, sit back and then work, what do you call it, do a bit of backward tracking, and then look at where mistakes were made. And like Prof has said, they are all friends. They were friends before now. Fubara and Wike are two sides of the same coin, basically. So I do not really see any difference. So they will always sit back together and do what they need to do, because every governor, every president would want a second term. And so they will always reconcile. Then coming to the issue of the Section 309, 305, and the suit of the PDP governors that went to the Supreme Court. I think ordinarily some people would view that as an academic exercise, the action having been completed. But we say the law is what the court says it is. So for the purpose of interpreting Section 305 and what should happen, whether the president has the powers to so declare, also to so vacate a democratically elected structure, that pronouncement is still very key. It will not become an academic exercise because it had happened. This is the third time it is happening and the democratic structures are being vacated. So if in interpreting the powers of the Supreme Court by virtue of Section 6 to interpret the law and to state the correct position of the law, so without, you know, taking, going to the fact and the issues that have happened in Rivers State, just that sole issue for determination would go a long way in saving Nigeria, you know, democracy, on whether a president has the power, even though he has the power to declare a state of emergency, whether in so doing he can sack a democratically elected structure, because there have been serious argument against it, including a former Attorney General, and the Vice President alluded to that when it happened under Jonathan's tenure.
All right, so many questions are asked with very limited time. Prof, as quickly as you can, how will the lessons learned from this period, for instance, what went wrong, what caused the crisis, how responses could have been better, be documented and translated perhaps into policy reform to strengthen democracy in Rivers State so we don't have a repeat of this scenario?
Several things. The first is godfatherism in politics. It's recognized everywhere, but you know, remote control cannot be tolerated. Second thing is, as the learned lawyer just said, the Supreme Court has to come down with some kind of judgment. I understand. I just saw somewhere that the case has been listed for hearing on the 19th of September. So that's the beginning. The Supreme Court has to come in here and help us so that we understand what the rules are. And finally, and which is very, very important, that we need to see how the government evolves in Rivers State. There are no repercussions to people who supported Sim when he looked like he was trying to separate from his master. That the laws are kept and followed. The fate of Sim in 2027 is not my concern. He's a politician. They will work things out. That doesn't concern me. This next thing, of course, is to make sure, like you said, an audit of some kind of accountability be given for the 6 months where the sole administrator was in charge of River State and its resources, so that there are no rumors. And he's a retired army officer. I hope that he's done enough to preserve his integrity.
All right, in 30 seconds, we're out of time, Mr. Liborous. Talk to us about how legal is it for a governor to now operate a state budget signed during an emergency rule by the sole administrator? I need you to speak to that in 30 seconds, sir.
Section 11 of the Constitution empowers the National Assembly to make laws for any state where it is incapable for the State House of Assembly of that state to sit. So the National Assembly, the budget was passed by the National Assembly in compliance with Section 11 of the Constitution. And so what just happened is it's like because of the vacuum created, the National Assembly made law, and so the governor will just inherit it. So it is a very legal process.
All right, gentlemen.
That Section 305, the court comes tomorrow to say you have no power to sack the democratically elected structures.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time.